Dominic Moore-Dunson grew up in Akron, often questioning his identity as an African American. Now the professional dancer and 2019 Cleveland Arts Prize winner is staging a work inspired by those feelings called The Black Card Project.
In 6th grade, Miller South, I'm sitting with the 7 other black boys in my grade at the time, and we're all sitting at the same lunchroom table. And we're talking about what we wanted to be when we grew up. And one of them says, I want to be in the NBA, I want to play like LeBron. And the other ones were, I want to be in the NFL, I want to be like Michael Vick. When it was my turn to say something, I said, well, I want to dance in Paris or play professional soccer in England. And there was this deafening silence that went on the table. And one of my friends looks at me and says, bruh, that ain't black. And all the kids started laughing. There's this overarching feeling that like, well, if I don't know this about the black culture, if I don't know this kind of music, I'm not black enough. If I don't like this kind of food, I'm not black enough. Sometimes I feel like I was supposed to learn how to be black somewhere. But there's no program to learn how to be black. And I kind of sat for a while and I was like, what if there was a school? What if there was a school where someone learned how to be black? And that's where it started. And I was like, what if there's this kind of weird, interesting character who's kind of like me, but like a different version of me in my head? And what if, he kind of went through all these classes and it kind of felt like a really weird version of The Wizard of Oz? Because you have a single character who runs into all these different characters and learns all this stuff. So it's kind of like the structure that we used. Kevin Parker, when I asked him to collaborate on the show, I didn't know really what the show was yet. I was talking to him, we went out to an Applebee's and we sat down and I was like, so I have this idea. I kind of want to talk to you about like what it means to be black. And we started just kind of like joking and laughing about all of these things that we knew about. So we're at Firestone High School, which is my alma mater. I graduated from Firestone in 2008. It's hard to talk about how important it is to me because this moment is full circle. At 14 years old, I was learning the foundations of what it meant to be a creator. At the same time, I was dealing with all these internal struggles of, well, can I dance? Should I be dancing? Can I play soccer? Should I be playing soccer? But coming into this place was like a very safe space for me to explore who I really, really knew I was as an artist at such a young age, and to be, 16 years later, bringing my 90-minute work, a very large work for somebody around my age, and knowing that, wow, just a couple hundred feet that way while I was on stage, I started this process.
I would say I've never really seen a show quite like this. This was completely different. The fact that it only had 2 people in it doing an entire story was like enough at that to set it aside from most things I've seen. I guess I never really thought about a black card, like ever having a black card, and like realizing that like it is a thing, like, oh, like there are things that I don't know about that like happen within my community.
I would say the slight stereotypicalness of it, it was pretty funny. Like the little gangster walk and the stereotypical clothing, it was pretty funny.
The problem with humor is it's actually the hardest thing to do on stage. Because you have to think about your own biases as what you think is funny versus what other people think is funny. So that's one of the first barriers. Inside of this conversation, we wanted to use humor because we wanted to pull people into our world, and making people laugh always does that. You want to pull people into the show before you hit them with the really hard topics. We couldn't start the show with the history section because it's too raw and it feels too close to home. So you invite people in by making things funny, by making them fun, playing their favorite music, and all of a sudden they're willing to go on the journey with you no matter where you take them. And we realized that's what we needed to do because like I've seen a lot of modern dance shows, and often when you talk about race, the piece is very heavy, and a lot of times you'll see people who are singing forward start to lean back and disengage because it feels like too much for them. So we were like, okay, well, what if we did the opposite? What if over time we got them to lean forward and then they would stay there? So it's also taking that idea of like, we have these characters who are these stereotypes, but what if we broke the stereotype and made you learn something about them that changed you a little bit? C.T. Payne, who's the thug, he doesn't think he's funny. He's very, very serious. But as you saw on the show today, the kids will laugh as soon as they see him. The part that was really difficult, actually, was making sure every character had integrity and it wasn't my emotional feelings about that character that came out. because me and Kevin talked about we can't be hypocrites. We can't say there's no one way to be black and then say, well, the way the thug's doing it is wrong. And I knew I wanted to do something that had to do with Black history, but I didn't know what. So I was just going through clips and things like that. And one day I had this dream that I was running. And I was just like, you know, there's a slave master running me, there was the dog happening and all this stuff. And then I had another dream about being in the Jim Crow South and what that felt like. And then I had another dream right after that that was like the 60s Black Panther movement. And then another dream that was kind of being this Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice type character. So the section is actually literally a dream I had.
All you can really hear is whippings and getting hit with batons and all of that. And I would say that that kind of is really reflectful on our history. I feel like that was probably the part that made it most impactful, was just like the way they drawn in the audio with the dancing, and I would say like that all just came in and made it so powerful.
I would love for this piece to tour nationally, to tour to all these large cities, especially where there's a large African-American population, and to get into the schools just like we did here. But also the show is also built for these students, but also their families. It's really, really important mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, auntie, uncle see the show, because what I would love to happen is everybody goes home that night and then they talk about it. That's the point, right? The mission of this project is to create conversation around the narrow aspects of the Black identity and then how that relates to economic development in the Black community.
This is living proof that you could literally do whatever you want to do. And even though you may get hit, you may get hurt, you may get brung down a little, you'll still be you and be able to go forward to wherever you're trying to achieve.
Today was the first performance where, I could see the audience a little bit, but it felt like 80 to 90% of the audience was the exact target audience this show is for. And it gave me a sense of like, this is why we did this.